Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new series, which I haven't really thought of a title for yet, but what it is works that survived to be recorded by the artists who led their premieres, or performed at their premieres, or gave their premieres. And those artists could be conductors, or instrumental soloists, or singers, or whatever. I have to figure out how that's going to work. But we're starting with, the concept is perfectly clear, right? We're starting with a work whose initial conductor, lived to record it several times. And it's really fun. And I think you might want to know sometimes if the recording that you're getting, or a recording that you're getting, is actually led by somebody with some particular inside knowledge of the work, or experience of the work, or something. And in this particular case, that's certainly true, because we're talking about The Planets by Holst. And the conductor is Adrian Boult, who led the premiere on 29 September 1918. And he recorded it at least 3 times in, 1945, 1966, and 1978. Just before his death, actually, all for EMI, or at least they're all on EMI Warner now. And that's a lot of planets, isn't it? He really knew the piece. But just imagine for a minute, because I think this is a wonderful bit of history. You know, Boult lived for a long time. He lived into his 90s. Let's get his dates, because that's also interesting. It really is kind of fascinating. Wait one second. I've got my wiki here, and we can look it up. Adrian Boult, famous British conductor and bald person. I like bald people. Let's see, 1889 to 1983. So there you go. That's quite a career, isn't it? He studied with Arthur Nikisch, the great German conductor who led the premiere of Bruckner's Seventh and other things like that, and made Deutsche Grammophon's first ever recording of Beethoven's Fifth in 1905 or something like that. It's an amazing legacy, a wonderful legacy, one of continuous vibrato, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. So anyway, here's the point. He led the first performance of The Planets in 1918, and he kept recording it afterwards. And they're splendid recordings, and they tell us a lot about performance practice, because they're very consistent recordings. What they're particularly consistent about is timings, particularly in his rather brisk approach to the slower bits, like Neptune, or Uranus, or whatever the last one is. Let me tell you. There we go. The Planets, 1978. He was very, very consistent. Let's look at the booklet here, where we get timings. All right, here we have Planets, all 3 of them. Neptune, the last movement, and the slowest movement, technically. It's an andante. 6 minutes and 26 seconds in 1945. 7 minutes and 15 seconds a little bit later. Possibly, some people say, because you didn't have to do 78 RPM sides, although I'm not always sure about that. Sometimes that may have been true. And then lastly, he came back to his fastest ever. His last recording, 6 minutes and 21 seconds in 1978. And so that's kind of interesting, isn't it? You can't always count on the original performer to stick to their original tempi, or to even follow the composer's intentions when it comes to those tempi. All we know is that he did have a certain authority because of his connection with the composer. And Boult recorded a lot of Holst. The interesting thing about The Planets is that he didn't do the initial recordings, because way back then, first of all, Holst was very much alive, and he recorded it twice, once acoustically and once electrically in the 1920s. The full work was not given a public performance until 1920 by Albert Coates, actually. He was the conductor then. And so it wasn't until 1945 that Boult got a chance to actually give it his imprimatur, which was quite a bit later from the time of the premiere in 1918, right in the wake of World War I, when it was considered a terribly radical and modernist work in English musical circles. But we have that authority going all the way back from the 1970s to the 1918 premiere. And I think connections like that are interesting. I don't know how much we can make of them in terms of interpretive authority, because a work has its own independent life, after all, and we discover new things about it when we hear different interpretations of it. So there is no one definitive interpretation or one way of looking at it, but this is definitely a case where the conductor who was associated with the piece and who led the work at its first ever performance really had the opportunity to give it his imprimatur in succeeding decades. And so he did 3 times for Warner alone. I think that's really, really cool. And I hope you agree. So let's see where this series goes. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. And keep on listening. Thanks for joining me. Take care.